Ethan Hayes stood on the edge of the research station's observation deck, gazing out at the sprawling shipyards below. The view never got old. Interstellar freighters, shimmering in hues of silver and cobalt, drifted lazily between docking bays. Around him, the steady hum of the station's life support systems provided a reassuring rhythm to his days. It was a far cry from Earth, but after 2 years out here on Alara Station, Ethan had stopped longing for home. He'd found a different kind of peace, one built on the constant motion of human ingenuity and the faint thrill of the unknown. Today, though, a fresh sort of unknown awaited him. The Zaindan ship that had arrived that morning carried a single passenger, Nari, a scholar from a world where language wasn't just a tool, it was an art. Ethan had read the briefing notes, skimmed the few sparse cultural guides the researchers had on hand, but they didn't prepare him for his first glimpse of her. When she stepped off the shuttle, her emerald-green skin gleaming under the station's artificial lighting, Ethan felt a momentary lapse in his usual composure. She was smaller than he'd imagined, barely reaching his shoulder, but she carried herself with a quiet grace that drew every eye in the docking bay. "Dr. Hayes?" Nari's voice was soft, her English thickly accented. She extended a hand in what must have been a human-style greeting, one of the many gestures she'd clearly studied before coming here. Ethan took her hand, surprised at how warm it was. "Nari, right? Welcome to Alara Station." Her lips quirked upward in what he assumed was a smile. "Thank you. I am excited to learn." "Well, you're in the right place." Ethan stepped aside, gesturing for her to follow. "We'll get you settled in your quarters first, and then we can talk about how you want to approach your research." As they walked through the station's brightly lit corridors, Ethan stole the occasional glance at her. She moved with a careful precision, as though each step were part of a deliberate dance. She didn't look around like most visitors did. Her focus remained ahead, as if she were already rehearsing the steps of some unseen plan. Ethan respected that kind of dedication, even if it made him curious. Their first official meeting took place in one of the station's conference rooms. Nari was seated across from him at a sleek, steel table, her hands folded neatly on the surface. Ethan leaned back in his chair, trying not to come off as too stiff. "So," he began, "what made you want to study human language in the first place?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. "Zaindan culture is very structured. Language is calculated. Precise. Your language," she paused, struggling to find the words, "is alive." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Alive?" Nari nodded slowly. "Not just rules. It changes. Grows. It is," she sighed, visibly frustrated. "I am sorry. I do not have the words." Ethan waved off her apology. "No need to be sorry. I get what you're saying, sort of. Human languages are messy, sure. But that's part of what makes them interesting." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, Ethan thought he saw a flicker of relief. "I want to understand. To feel it, not just study it." He smiled. "Then you're already ahead of the game. The best way to learn is to jump in. We'll start with the basics, and I'll help you work up from there." Nari tilted her head slightly, a curious expression on her face. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan shrugged. "It's my job. Besides, I think we could learn a lot from each other." Over the following days, Ethan and Nari fell into a steady rhythm. Their lessons were more like conversations, at least, they were when Nari felt confident enough to speak. Ethan encouraged her, cracking jokes, pointing out patterns, and occasionally slipping into slang just to see her puzzled reaction. Each time, she'd furrow her brow, her delicate fingers tapping a silent beat on the table as she worked through his meaning. Slowly but surely, her English improved. One afternoon, they took a break in the station's garden, a hydroponic space filled with earth plants that helped maintain the station's atmosphere. Ethan leaned against the railing, arms crossed, while Nari carefully plucked a small green leaf from a basil plant, studying it like a rare artifact. "What do you call this again?" she asked, holding it up. "Basil," Ethan replied. "You ever taste it before?" She shook her head. "It is not found on Zaindan." "Go ahead, try it," Ethan said, grinning. "It's a bit strong, but not bad." Nari hesitated, then placed the leaf on her tongue. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she nodded slowly. "Interesting. Your foods have words that are new to me." "New and tasty," Ethan said, chuckling. "We've got plenty more where that came from." For a moment, the two of them stood in comfortable silence, the low hum of the station's systems blending with the faint rustling of leaves in the hydroponic trays. It wasn't much, but it felt like a step forward. Like they were finally starting to understand each other, even if just a little. The turning point came during a late-night session in the station's central library. They were reviewing some of Nari's notes. Ethan had convinced her to jot down her thoughts in English instead of Zaindon, and she'd grown increasingly frustrated. Her sentences were awkward, her grammar riddled with errors, and it was clear she was struggling to express herself the way she wanted. "I cannot do this," Nari muttered, her hands clenching into fists. "Your language is too different." Ethan reached across the table, gently covering her hand with his own. "Hey, don't beat yourself up. You're doing great. Seriously, you've come a long way since you first got here." She looked up at him, her emerald eyes filled with doubt. "You mean that?" "I do," he said firmly. "And if you keep at it, you'll be speaking like a native in no time." For a long moment, Nari simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she relaxed, her fingers uncurling. "Thank you," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "No problem. That's what I'm here for." Their bond had begun as a professional relationship, teacher and student, human and alien, but something deeper was starting to form. Ethan didn't know what it was yet, but he couldn't deny that he looked forward to their time together more and more each day. And if Nari felt the same, she never said so. Instead, she let her actions speak for her, a faint smile here, a gentle touch there. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make Ethan wonder what the future might hold. And for now, that was enough. Ethan's quarters were cramped but comfortable, a reflection of the utilitarian design of Alara Station. It wasn't much, just a cot bolted to the wall, a desk with a built-in console, and a small display panel showing the station's daily status report. Nari stood by the door, her hands clasped in front of her, taking in her surroundings with the quiet intensity Ethan had come to expect. "You can sit, you know," Ethan said, motioning to the one spare chair. Nari hesitated for a moment before pulling out the chair and sitting down. Her movements were deliberate, as if she were following a script she had written in her head. Once settled, she tilted her head and asked, "We work here today?" Ethan nodded. Thought it might be more comfortable than the conference room. Fewer interruptions. Plus, you'll get to see how humans actually live, at least how I live. Her eyes drifted to the small shelf above his desk. On it sat a handful of personal items, a family photo in a simple frame, a small model of an old Earth shuttle, and a few data sticks labeled with faded handwriting. She reached out tentatively, stopping just short of touching the model. "What is this?" "An orbiter-class shuttle. One of the first designs humans used to transport people to and from orbital platforms. My dad had one just like it when I was a kid." Ethan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You ever heard of it?" Nari shook her head. "No. But it looks old. Important." Ethan chuckled. "It's old, all right. As for important, maybe to some. My dad used to tell me stories about how these shuttles helped pave the way for modern space travel. I guess it stuck with me." She tilted her head, considering his words. "In Zaindon culture, we keep artifacts of our ancestors. They teach us who we are. Maybe this is like that." "Maybe," Ethan said, surprised by the insight. He hadn't thought of the model that way before. "I guess you're not just here to learn our language, you're learning what makes us tick." "Tick?" Nari repeated, her brow furrowing. "Ah, sorry. It means what motivates us. What we care about." She nodded slowly. "I see. Language and culture are connected." Ethan smiled. "Exactly. Now let's work on those expressions we covered yesterday." Nari shifted her focus back to him, her posture straightening. "I studied the phrases you gave me. I think I understand." "Great," Ethan said. "Why don't you try using them in a sentence?" Nari took a moment to compose herself. Then she said the orbital shuttle was important because it taught humans how to travel in space. "Not bad," Ethan said, nodding. "But you can make it flow more naturally. Try, the orbital shuttle was important because it showed humans how to travel in space." Nari repeated the sentence, her pronunciation improving with each attempt. "Showed humans how to travel in space." "There you go," Ethan said. "Sounds more natural already." She smiled faintly, the corners of her lips curving upward. "Thank you. Your language is complicated. But I am learning." "You're doing great," Ethan said. "You've got a knack for it. Before you know it, you'll be chatting with the crew like a pro." "Chatting," Nari echoed, her tone thoughtful. "That is when people talk casually, yes?" "Exactly. You're picking it up fast." Nari's expression grew serious. "I want to understand your language fully. Not just words, but meaning. Emotion. How you connect." Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "That's the tricky part. Words are only part of the equation. The rest is tone, body language, context. It's something you learn by doing, by talking to people, watching how they react, seeing what makes them laugh, or what makes them, well, quiet. Nari's gaze dropped to her hands, her fingers lightly brushing against each other in a slow, rhythmic motion. On Zained, we do not use words for everything. Sometimes we gesture or sing. But here, words seem more powerful. Ethan nodded. They can be. But don't underestimate what you already know. Those gestures you use, they say a lot, too. It's all part of the same puzzle. Nari looked up, her eyes meeting his. Then I will learn the puzzle. Every piece. Ethan smiled. That's the spirit. Let's keep it. Over the next hour, they worked through a series of exercises, switching between written sentences and spoken practice. Nari's confidence grew with each correct answer, and Ethan found himself impressed by her determination. By the time they wrapped up, she was stringing together more complex sentences without hesitation. You're really making progress, Ethan said as he leaned back, stretching his arms over his head. I think that's enough for today, though. Don't want to burn out. Nari nodded. Thank you, Ethan. Your help is appreciated. It's my pleasure, he said. Same time tomorrow? Yes, Nari said, her voice firm. I will be ready. As she stood and moved toward the door, Ethan watched her go, his mind lingering on the quiet determination that defined her every action. He'd worked with plenty of researchers and linguists over the years, but Nari was different. She wasn't just learning a language. She was immersing herself in it, embracing every nuance, every subtle shift in meaning. And as she disappeared into the corridor, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what she would teach him in return. Ethan stood at the station's viewport, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. The last few weeks had passed in a blur of lessons and late-night discussions with Nari. Her progress with the human language had been remarkable, far quicker than Ethan had anticipated. But it wasn't just her ability to learn that impressed him. It was the way she absorbed everything, every inflection and gesture, every tone and pause. Nari's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Ethan, is this correct? He turned to see her seated at the long steel table in the central library. Scattered around her were a variety of human novels, printouts of idiomatic expressions, and a well-worn tablet with translation software. She pointed at a sentence she'd just written on the screen. Ethan walked over, leaning down to get a closer look. The sun rises and sets, but its path changes with the seasons, he read aloud. Yeah, that's correct. And it actually sounds pretty poetic. Nari tilted her head. Poetic? You mean beautiful? Exactly, Ethan said, smiling. You're getting a feel for how to use imagery in English. That's not easy. She considered his words for a moment, her long, slender fingers brushing the edge of the tablet. Thank you, she said softly. Your language, it feels different now. Less like rules, more like music. That's a good way to put it, Ethan replied. Language is more than just a set of instructions. It's how we connect, how we share experiences. Nari's expression grew thoughtful. I think Zaindan words are static. They have one meaning, one purpose. Your words, they can change. They can bend. Exactly, Ethan said. Words can shift depending on how we say them, when we say them, even who we're saying them to. That's why language is so tied to culture. It's not just about what we say, it's about how it makes people feel. Nari leaned back in her chair, her gaze shifting to the books in front of her. I feel it now. When I speak your words, I can hear their weight, their rhythm. It is like dancing. Dancing? Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her analogy. That's not something I've heard before. She nodded. Yes. A dance of sounds. You do not simply speak. You move with the words, like a current in water. Ethan sat down across from her, folding his arms on the table. That's a really beautiful way to think about it. You're not just learning the language, you're starting to understand how we live it. They fell into a comfortable silence for a moment, the steady hum of the station's systems providing a backdrop to their thoughts. Finally, Ethan said, So, what's the next step in your studies? What do you want to focus on? Nari looked up, her green eyes steady. I want to learn how to express emotions. Your language has so many words for feelings. Happiness, sadness, love, anger. On Zained, we use very few words for these. I want to understand how humans show what they feel. Ethan smiled. I think that's one of the hardest parts. We don't just use words to show emotion, we use our faces, our tone, even how we stand. It's something you pick up by spending time around people. Then I will observe more, Nari said with a determined nod. I will watch, listen, and feel. You've already come a long way, Ethan said. If anyone can figure it out, it's you. Nari's expression softened and she gave him a small, genuine smile. Thank you. I am grateful for your help. Ethan leaned back, stretching his arms. It's been fun for me too. I never really thought about how much goes into our language until I started explaining it to you. Makes me appreciate it more. She tilted her head, studying him. You have taught me much, Ethan. But have I taught you anything? Ethan considered her question. I think so. You've taught me that language isn't just something you learn, it's something you feel. The way you talk about it, the way you describe it, it makes me think about my own language differently. Like I'm seeing it through your eyes. Nari seemed pleased by his answer. Then we are both learning. Absolutely, Ethan said. And I think that's what makes this partnership work. We're helping each other grow. Nari looked at him for a long moment, her gaze steady and thoughtful. Thank you, Ethan. I hope we can continue to learn together. Ethan grinned. Me too. As they returned to their work, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a professional collaboration. The way Nari spoke about language, the way she studied every word as if it were a precious artifact, it was something rare. And though he couldn't quite put it into words, he felt a connection forming, one that went beyond the boundaries of culture and species. He had no idea where it would lead, but he was willing to find out. Ethan fiddled with the edges of the data pad, scrolling through the day's tasks. On the screen was a schedule packed with routine station maintenance, an upcoming crew meeting, and a minor cargo delivery. It was all mundane stuff, but for once, Ethan didn't mind. He had something to look forward to that had nothing to do with ship manifests or power calibrations, another session with Nari. They met in the station's garden again, a place Ethan had come to associate with the easy rhythm of their conversations. The artificial sun lamps cast a warm glow over the rows of earth plants, basil, thyme, tomatoes flourishing in their hydroponic beds. It smelled alive here, unlike the sterile metallic tang of the rest of the station. When Nari arrived, she carried a small bag, her movements light and purposeful. Ethan noticed the faint curve of her lips, a near smile that had become more frequent as she gained confidence. What's in the bag? Ethan asked, gesturing toward it. Nari placed it carefully on the table and opened it, revealing a collection of flat, rectangular cards. I made these, she said, to practice. Ethan leaned over, examining the cards. Each one displayed a phrase in Zaindan on one side, and its English equivalent on the other. He picked one up. The stars are bright tonight, he read aloud. He flipped it to see the Zaindan text, the intricate lines of their alphabet etched in dark ink. You made these yourself? Yes, Nari said. I thought it would help me remember. That's pretty clever, Ethan said. Mind if I quiz you? She nodded, sitting down across from him. Ethan shuffled the cards, then held one up with the English side facing her. What's this say in Zaindan? Nari's emerald eyes scanned the text, her fingers brushing her chin as she thought. Enter Shirla Taril, she recited. Perfect, Ethan said. Okay, how about this one? They went through a dozen cards, Nari translating each one with increasing confidence. When they finished, Ethan gave her an approving nod. You nailed it. You're not just learning these phrases. You're starting to think in both languages. Nari looked pleased. It is because you are a good teacher. Ethan chuckled. Well, you're a good student. Makes my job easy. For a while, they simply sat in the warm, green-lit space, going through more cards and trading phrases back and forth. Ethan asked her how to say certain emotions in Zaindan, and Nari tested him on how to describe colors and textures in English. It was a fluid exchange, and Ethan found himself laughing more than he had in weeks. At one point, Nari hesitated over a particularly complicated phrase, stumbling on the pronunciation. Frustration flickered across her face, and she looked down at the table. Hey, Ethan said gently. It's okay. Nobody gets it. How much I do not know. Ethan smiled. That just means you're improving. It's like climbing a mountain. When you start, the top looks far away. But the higher you go, the more you realize how much more there is to climb. Nari tilted her head, her emerald eyes narrowing thoughtfully. So, the more I struggle, the more I learn? Exactly, Ethan said. And you're doing great. You've already climbed a lot higher than most people would in your position. She considered his words, then gave a small, determined nod. I will keep climbing. That's the spirit, Ethan said. As the session went on, they moved beyond the cards and started having longer conversations. Nari began telling Ethan about her home world, about the towering glass forests that shimmered under 3 moons, about the flowing rivers that sang a continuous, low melody. Ethan listened intently, asking questions and encouraging her to describe more. She faltered occasionally, searching for the right words, but each time she tried again until her meaning was clear. In turn, Ethan shared stories about Earth, about its vibrant cities, its sprawling oceans, and the variety of languages spoken across its continents. He told her about the first time he saw snow as a kid, how he'd built a lopsided snowman that collapsed as soon as the sun came out. Snow, Nari repeated, her voice soft. Cold water that falls from the sky and becomes solid? Pretty much, Ethan said. It's beautiful when it blankets everything. Like a fresh start. Nari smiled faintly. I would like to see the snow. I hope you get the chance, Ethan said. It's something everyone should experience at least once. Their conversations grew more personal as the hours passed. They talked about their families, their childhoods, their favorite foods. Nari explained how Zaindans bonded through shared rituals, lighting small, glowing orbs during festivals or weaving intricate patterns into their garments as a form of storytelling. Ethan found himself sharing things he hadn't thought about in years, memories that surfaced easily in her presence. At some point, as they were discussing music, Nari's hand brushed against Ethan's on the table. The touch was light, almost accidental, but it lingered just a moment longer than it needed to. Ethan glanced at her, seeing the faintest hint of a blush on her green cheeks. He didn't pull away. Instead, he let his fingers turn slightly so that they were resting side by side. Nari didn't move either. The silence stretched, not awkward, but full of unspoken understanding. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. You know, he said quietly, when I started this job, I didn't expect to be sitting here, learning about Zaindan festivals and talking about snow. This wasn't in the manual. Nari looked at him, her expression unreadable at first. Then slowly she smiled. I did not expect to be here either. But I am glad I came. Me too, Ethan said. In that moment, words seemed unnecessary. They sat in the warm glow of the garden, the faint hum of the station around them, and simply enjoyed the shared connection. For all the complexities of language, it was in the quiet, unspoken moments that they found the most meaning. Ethan knew this wasn't the end of their journey. Far from it. But for now, it was enough. Ethan leaned against the railing on the observation deck, staring out into the void. It was one of his favorite spots on the station. Quiet, peaceful, and perfect for sorting out his thoughts. In the past few months, his sessions with Nari had become the highlight of his days. He looked forward to their conversations. The way her eyes would light up when she finally grasped a complex English phrase, or the way her laughter would bubble up unexpectedly when she caught one of his jokes. Today, though, something felt different. He hadn't seen Nari in 2 days, which was unusual. They typically met daily, sometimes more often if their schedules allowed. But now she seemed to be avoiding him. He'd left her a message that morning, suggesting they meet at their usual spot in the garden. But she never showed. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. What's going on, Nari? He muttered to himself. As if in answer, the door to the observation deck hissed open, and Nari stepped inside. Her movements were slower than usual, her shoulders slightly hunched. She looked up at Ethan, her green eyes clouded with an emotion he couldn't quite place. Nari, he said, pushing off the railing. I was starting to think you'd disappeared on me. She hesitated before walking over to stand beside him. I needed time to think. About what? Ethan asked gently. About us, Nari said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She turned to face him fully, her hands clenching and unclenching at her sides. I am learning your language, your culture, and I am feeling things I do not understand. Things I was not prepared for. Ethan studied her face, searching for a clue to what she was struggling with. Nari, you can talk to me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. She looked down, her voice tight. I do not know if I can do this. Do what? Ethan asked, stepping closer. Talk to me, Nari. What's going on? She met his gaze, her eyes shimmering with a mix of frustration and something deeper. I came here to learn, Ethan. But now, I feel more than that. I feel connected to you. And it frightens me. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Why would that scare you? Because it is not supposed to happen, Nari said, her voice trembling. On Zained, we do not bond in this way. Our relationships are built on structure, tradition, not this. Ethan reached out, resting a hand lightly on her arm. Nari, there's no right or wrong way to feel. You're allowed to have emotions, to care about someone. That's not something you need to be afraid of. But I do not know what to do with these feelings, she said, her hands rising to cover her face. I do not know how to be close to someone in this way. Ethan felt a pang of sympathy. He'd seen Nari tackle complex linguistic puzzles, navigate the subtleties of human idioms, and adapt to life on a station full of unpredictable personalities. But this was something she couldn't analyze or translate. Nari, he said softly, lowering her hands from her face. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just let yourself feel what you're feeling. We can take it one step at a time. She looked up at him, her expression vulnerable. One step at a time? Ethan smiled gently. Exactly. No pressure, no expectations. Just let it happen naturally. Nari nodded slowly as if testing the words in her mind. I do not want to lose this connection. But it is so new. So uncertain. I understand, Ethan said. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this. She gave him a tentative smile, the corners of her lips lifting slightly. Thank you, Ethan. Anytime, he said. Now how about we sit down and just talk? No lessons, no goals. Just talk. Nari nodded again, and they moved to sit on one of the benches by the viewport. The stars beyond the station seemed to twinkle brighter as they began to talk, their voices low and steady. They shared memories, stories, and even a few quiet laughs. And in that moment, the uncertainty began to fade, replaced by a warmth that neither of them could fully explain, but both of them were beginning to understand. Ethan glanced at the control panel on the communications deck where rows of blinking lights reflected off his face. The station's main array was down for maintenance, just another routine task in the endless cycle of keeping Alara operational. But he wasn't alone in the quiet room. Nari sat at the other end of the console, her delicate fingers hovering over the keyboard as she carefully entered commands. They'd volunteered to handle this repair together, a sign that their work had moved beyond teaching sessions in the garden. How's it coming on your end? Ethan asked, leaning back in his chair. Nari tilted her head, glancing at the monitor. Almost done. The alignment code was more complex than I expected. It always is, Ethan replied. These old systems have a way of hiding surprises. You think everything's fine, then bam, there's a subroutine nobody's seen in years. She raised an eyebrow, her emerald eyes sparkling with curiosity. Bam? It's just an expression, he said, grinning. Means something happens suddenly, out of nowhere. Ah. Nari nodded, her lips quirking into a small smile. Bam. She said it slowly, as though savoring the way it felt. It is a good word. Ethan chuckled. It's got some punch, doesn't it? Punch, she repeated, now clearly amused. Yeah, like, it makes an impact. It's strong. Language is very playful, she said thoughtfully. You can take words and make them mean more than they should. Exactly, Ethan said. It's part of what makes it fun. She leaned back slightly, her expression shifting to one of quiet contemplation. I never thought of language as fun before. On Zained, it is precise. Correct. But with you? She trailed off, her gaze meeting his. With me what? He prompted gently. You show me that words can connect people, not just inform them. That's the idea, Ethan said. Language isn't just about getting a point across. It's about understanding, about bringing people closer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the station's systems filled the silence, a steady backdrop to their thoughts. Then Nari broke it. Ethan, she began, her voice softer now. Have you ever felt uncertain about your words? Like you do not know if they will reach the other person? He frowned slightly, considering her question. Yeah, I think everyone feels that way sometimes. I know I have. When? She asked, her emerald gaze steady. He hesitated, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. When I'm trying to tell someone how I feel, for starters. There's always that little voice in your head that says, what if they don't understand? What if they don't feel the same? Nari nodded slowly, her expression serious. I feel this way now. With you. Ethan blinked, caught off guard by her honesty. You mean, about what we've been talking about? Not just the lessons, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I mean everything. You and I do not know how to say it, how to make you understand. He sat up straighter, his heart suddenly pounding. You don't have to have all the right words, Nari. Just tell me what's on your mind. She hesitated, then drew in a slow breath. I feel connected to you, in a way that I did not expect, and it frightens me. Ethan frowned, concern flashing across his face. Why does it scare you? Because I do not know what it means, she admitted. In my culture, this type of connection is not common. It is not something we are taught to understand. And with you, it is also different. Ethan reached out, resting a hand on hers. You're not alone in this, Nari. I feel it too. Care about you, and I'm just as unsure of where it's going as you are. But I think that's okay. We don't have to have all the answers right now. She looked down at their joined hands, her voice quiet. You are patient with me, kind. I have never known someone like you. And I've never met anyone like you, Ethan said. But that's what makes this special. We're figuring it out together. Nari lifted her eyes to his, her expression softening. You mean that? I do, he said. So let's keep talking. Let's keep learning from each other. We don't have to rush. Just one step at a time. She nodded, a faint smile spreading across her lips. One step at a time. They spent the next hour finishing the repairs, their conversation weaving in and out of their work. Nari asked questions about Earth customs, and Ethan told her about old human traditions. How families gathered around fireplaces in the winter, how people danced at weddings, how music seemed to bring everyone closer. Nari, in turn, shared more about Zayn. She described the way her people wove intricate patterns into their clothes, how each thread told a story. She explained their music, which wasn't sung but played on resonating crystals that emitted harmonies when touched. As they talked, the final adjustments to the array came together smoothly. By the time they ran the final diagnostics, Ethan realized something had shifted. The conversation felt effortless now, the words flowing naturally between them. When the array came back online and the lights on the console turned green, Ethan turned to Nari and grinned. Looks like we're back in business. Nari looked at the console, then back at him. Back in business, she repeated, smiling. Another idiom. Another one for your collection, he said. Pretty soon, you'll know more than I do. She shook her head, her smile soft. No, I will always be learning. Well, Ethan said, standing up and offering her his hand. Let's keep learning together. Nari took his hand, her touch light but warm. Together, they walked out of the comms deck side by side, leaving the faint hum of the systems behind. For once, the silence between them wasn't uncertain. It was comfortable. They didn't need words to fill every moment. It was enough to know they were learning, step by step, what it meant to truly understand each other.